classification systems are based on the number and the size of the fragments. It means each fragment, which part is included in each classification system. For example, the main part is the head and greater trochanter and minor trochanter and shaft. They're the two parts. So both two-dimensional and three-dimensional classification system is which parts included in each fragment. For example, fragment includes only the head, femoral head fragment, and we call it a two-part fragment. There are three fragments. The one fragment is proximal fragment, femoral head. One other part is the shaft, and one other part is the greater trochanter. That is Jensen type 3, and so on. So, but maybe the location and the number of the fragments are not sufficient. Is not sufficient to classify and to predict the cutout or the instability after the figuration. So I proposed the displacement is very important to predict the fracture stability and subsequent cutout of the lag screw. So I classified to the angulation and shift. And AP view, the angulation is classified as varus displacement and valgus displacement. And sorry. Okay, and shift means the medialization and lateralization of the proximal fragment. Similarly, in the lateral view, the angulation is classified as flexion and extension, and shift means anterior shift and posterior shift. So not only the size and the number of the fragment, but also the angulation and shift of the fragment. That means the displacement is very important. So I reported this in the Japanese Fracture Society because excessive sliding that means we found the excessive sliding. In other words, over sliding after the fixation of using the lag screw is very risky because of the lack of bone contact. Due to the lack of bone contact, the lag screw can slide excessively. So we call it excessive sliding or over sliding. After that, so after the maximal sliding of the lag screw, then the femoral head can rotate and eventually cut out. So to prevent the cutout is to prevent the first is prevent the excessive sliding, and second to prevent the rotation. And in some patients, is the first sliding and then rotation, but other fracture is occur simultaneously. In the sliding and in the same time, the rotation can occur, and finally cut out can occur. So I indicated that more than 8 millimeter sliding indicates an increasing risk of cutout. So just after operation and 1 week after the operation, and compare the location of the lag screw and calculate the sliding length of the lag screw. If it is more than 8 millimeter, the patient must be careful because some patient can occur the cutout. after that. So such patient we should keep in mind to keep follow. Otherwise, sometimes patient go back due to the cutout. So I reported this one in the Japanese Fracture Society 2008. It was more than 10 years later. Because from the 20 years ago and 10 years ago, I was focused on the fracture, hip fracture, especially in the hip fracture. So in this period, I studied so many patients about the both femoral neck fracture, trochanteric fracture. Then eventually I devised my own implants. So there is a story in the both the femoral neck fracture. Neck fracture, I already told about it, and I'm now talking about the trochanteric fracture. Eventually, I devised my own device due to that story. Because my purpose is to prevent the cutout. So the part three I said in this session, the purpose and aim of treatment for trochanteric fracture is a bone union without cutout. This is the final goal. So to achieve this, we should know a lot about it. Because in Japan, there are so many orthopedic patients. So bone is very fragile. So it is easy to break and easy to cut out. So cut out is a serious problem, especially for the aging countries. So we are very, very focused on the mechanism and the prevention of cutout. So then this slide shows the first is excessive sliding. So for weeks postoperatively, it is apparent the lag screw slide more than 1 centimeter. Then eventually this patient was cut out. So again, Jensen, Evans, and AO, and classification system and sliding is no relation, basically no relation. So I focus on the type of displacement. So I classify it as impacted fracture. That is varus displacement and lateral shift or the proximal fragment. On the lateral view, the proximal fragment is posterior shifted. No, this is a misspelling. Posterior shift. That means the proximal fragment impact into the distal fragment. Even after the reduction, there are two big bone defects. Even the secure fixation of the lag screw, even the lag screw is inserted in the proper position. So due to the lack of bone here, that can slide easily to disappear this bone defect, and eventually the excessive oversliding can occur. And after that, the bone can rotate and finally cut out can occur. So this type of impact fracture is very risky. So this is the typical impacted fracture. So proximal fragment, varus, displacement, and laterally shifted. So proximal fragment completely impacted into the distal fragment. In the lateral view, this proximal fragment shifts posteriorly. This is the typical impacted fracture. It is really, really risky. Even this fracture type is classified as the two two-part fracture. So many surgeons believe that two-fragment fracture, two-part fracture is stable and easy to treat. But we must focus on the direction of the displacement. Otherwise, you can experience the cutout and very surprised by the cutout even after this classified as stable type and simple type fracture. So I classified another type of fracture. This is a separated type fracture. It's this fragment, both fragments are displaced more than one thickness of the shaft width. This one. This means there is no bony contact, either AP or lateral view. So this is the separate type on AP view. So this fragment is completely displaced from the distal bone fragment. This type is in the AP view. It seems something overlap. But in fact, in the lateral view, there is no bone connection, bone contact, because of the anterior displacement of the anterior beak of the proximal fragment. This is the very, very unstable and tend to displace. Displacement force is very big. Again, there is no bony contact. So it is very difficult to stabilization. So again, to measure the sliding length is very important. So I propose the very simple and accurate sliding the calculation system for after the IM nail. So this is the total length of the lag screw or braid. And to draw the line, the intersection of the lateral end of the IM nail and the superior edge of the lag screw, and this point. This point is medial edge and the lower edge. So, and draw the line, and draw the center line of the lag screw or braid. And the cross section, this is a cross section. So they calculate the distance from the total length and length from here to here. So even the this femur is rotated, slightly anteriorly rotated, this ratio never change. So we can easily and accurately calculate. So I and my colleague reported in this journal. So if you're interested in this measurement system, please find this journal. This is a Korean journal, and this is a free access. So you can freely find, so you can freely get the full paper. So using this measurement system, I measured so many patients' sliding lengths because the cutout is not so popular, but very serious. So maybe cutout rate should be the 1% or less. But maybe in the near recently, this percentage can slightly increase due to the so many patients have osteoporosis. Because in Japan, more than 100 years patient is not surprisingly. Not so many, not so rare, because due to the lack of the bone strength, so cutout is slightly getting bigger. But anyway, to accurately calculate the sliding length is very important to predict the cutout. Then I measure the sliding length, and femoral head rotation in the same time. Interestingly, the patient whose femoral head is rotated, whose femoral head was rotated, is the sliding length bigger than the patient without the femoral head rotation. So femoral head rotation and sliding length, it both are very indicates the risk of cutout. It implies the very, very unstable fracture. So another Japanese surgeon it proposed the classification system. He was focused on the anterior edge, anterior cortex of the proximal fragment on the lateral view. He classified into three subtypes. Subtype A means the anterior beak of the proximal fragment displaced anteriorly. Subtype N means the anterior cortex of the proximal fragment and distal fragment in the same level. So that means the anatomical reduction. This is a subtype P, is a subtype of posterior. The proximal fragment comes inferior to the anterior cortex. My classification system, this is classified and impacted fracture. Then he classified this subtype A, N, and P and compare the sliding length after that. So not surprisingly, subtype P had the biggest sliding length than the subtype A and subtype N. So because this type is very, very unstable. So we are very take care about the patient with subtype P classification. It is easily classified using the lateral view. This is Utsunomiya's classification. They classified into the sixth category after the implantation, after the internal fixation of the femoral head. And in the AFT view, they classify into the three types. The focus on the medial edge of the proximal fragment. The medial type is the lower edge of the medial cortex of the femoral neck. It locates medially, then come against the medial border of medial edge of the femoral shaft. So this one is anatomical type. Anatomical is two cortex is located at the same level. And this is the lateral type. It is something unclear, but please follow the medial edge of the proximal fragment here, and it comes inside the distal fragment. It is the same as my classification system and classifies as impact type. The proximal fragment is impacted into the distal fragment. So this is the lateral type. And in the lateral view, similar to the equator classification, and this is similar to the subtype N, subtype A, because this anterior fragment comes anterior to the distal fragment. This is the posterior to the anterior fragment, anterior cortex of the distal fragment. This is called by intramedullary type, IM type. But this is also the impacted type. So this red color fracture is the impacted fracture I classified. So it's a very unstable because of the lack of the bony contact. So there is no stopper to prevent the excessive fragment, sliding, over sliding. So similarly, and in both in the anatomical type, this is anatomical type, and this is the extramedullary type. It is also stable. So many Japanese surgeons prefer to use this classification system. So in the recently, many surgeons try to reduce the bone fragment, at least anatomical type. If possible, to reduce to the extramedullary type to achieve the bony contact after the fixation of the fragment. So Utsunomiya et al. Compare the sliding length at 1 week. This is anatomical type and the media type. Sliding length is 1 or 2 millimeter. It is quite normal, not so much. But lateral type is bigger than the media type. And similarly, IM type is bigger than the anatomical type or extramedullary type. So this graph shows the anatomical reduction or medial reduction or extramedullary reduction is beneficial to prevent the excessive sliding. Sorry, this is sliding. And there are so many Japanese reports to compare the sliding length of the subtypes A and subtypes N and subtypes P. The red one is the subtype P. In other words, this is the extramedullary type. And both gamma nail, IM nail, and CHS, the subtype P after the patient with the subtype P is bigger than the subtype A or subtype N. So, so now in Japan, intraoperative reduction is very popular. So this is my technique. To insufficient reduction, it means neck axis and femoral shaft axis not come into the same level. So to reduce this one, and sometimes the fracture displacement like this. To reduce, I lift up shaft using the jig and then or compression from the front. Then check the two lateral view and adjust the axis and the target device, adjust the jig and insert lag screw. This is the reduction of the displacement of the femoral shaft and the femoral neck. But furthermore, so not only the adjustment of the both fragment, but also the many surgeon to try to reduce extramedullary. So this is the interfocus pinning. So just like the Kapanji procedure. So this, if the fragment fracture is to be seen as the IM type, intermediate type, or subtype P, then insert the K-wire or Steinman pin into the fragment until gap of the fragment, and then lift up the proximal fragment, keeping this position, insert the lag screw. This is quite popular procedure in Japan. And other surgeons try to reduce due to the traction. To reduce the IM type, intramedullary type, then once abduct and internal rotate, and to prove the distal fragment and separate both fragment, and then external rotate and get a touch to the both fragment. So through this procedure, these authors believe that the IF type is reducted without the pinning or something other intervention. This is the reduction for the extramedullary type. To the first abduction and external rotation, then traction and internal rotation and adducted. Of course, it is we can do this procedure the pre-operation after anesthesia and try the closer direction, but sometimes succeed. Sometimes it's quite difficult to reduct. Such patient we can we can add the reduction maneuver intraoperatively. So this orchard shows the mini open method using an elevator. To traction, this fragment shows the still the subtype P intramedullary type. Then open the slightly big incision to the lateral side and insert elevator within the fracture line and then lift up using the elevator, and in the same time as the external rotation to open the fracture because impact type the anterior side is impacted. If the distal fragment is external rotated, anterior fracture line can open and then insert the elevator and lift up. Then to reduce the external rotation and reduct to the neutral position or slightly internal rotation position, and then insert the device. This is also popular method. And some special surgeon devise this the reduction system. This is a spatula. This is very convenient to sometimes the medial edge of the fragment is displayed too medially. Of course, medial displacement is a little bit stable fracture type, but too much displacement can separation of bone. So using this device, the medial edge of the bone can pull laterally and reduce the displacement, and inside time it can be used also to reduce insert this one into the fragment and push up the proximal fragment and convert intramedullary type to the extramedullary type. It is really interesting. So furthermore, other surgeon focused on the iliofemoral ligament, because iliofemoral ligament is very strong, one of the strongest ligament in your body. So the relationship of the insertion of this iliofemoral ligament and the fracture line is very important. Sometimes the type of fracture is defined by the relationship of the ligament and the fracture line. Please have a look at this figure. If this fracture line is here, outside of the insertion of the iliofemoral ligament, this proximal fragment can display anteriorly greatly. If the fracture line is just same as the insertion of the iliofemoral ligament, the fracture is relatively stable. So in such fracture, we can only add the traction and internal rotation or external rotation, or abduction or adduction is enough to reduce. So after the fixation, the stability should be good. And this one is if the fracture line is inside this ligament. Sometimes it can cause the intramedullary type of the displacement. But furthermore, this ligament, this one and this one, is sometimes obstacle of the reduction. So because of the traction of the tension of this ligament, this fragment can displace anteriorly. It is quite difficult to reduce without detach of this ligament. So in the same, if there is intact insertion of the iliofemoral ligament, this displacement is very difficult to reduce. So if we add the closed reduction after an anesthesia on the fracture table, if the reduction is not sufficient, so one idea is detach the iliofemoral ligament intraoperatively before the implantation. After in most device, for example CHS, we can cut here and then insert elevator and we can detach here. Or on IM nail, insert elevator from here or from the wound for the lag screw, we can insert the elevator and detach. Even a partial detachment of the ligament. So sometimes fracture, we can manage, control the fracture, even after the partial detach of the iliofemoral ligament. So you should keep in mind to reduce a good reduction. So detachment of the iliofemoral ligament is necessary in some cases. Okay, this is the end of my talk.